What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. I am DJ, aka Token Black Guy. And for the first time, hit that like button, subscribe button. So we're here with the episode 2 breakdown of Ahsoka. We already did breakdown episode 1. Really enjoyed episode 1. Learned a lot from the first breakdown. Like I said, I'm a newer Star Wars fan. Probably the past 2 or 3 years, I really dove deep into Star Wars. Started watching Clone Wars. I've finished about halfway of Rebels, so I'm just trying to get more deeper into the lore and stuff like that. So watching this show Ahsoka, some things I don't know, so it's good to get these breakdowns and kind of figure out things I missed and everything to get the overall story and everything. But without further ado, here's Mr. Eric Voss with episode 2 breakdown. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Star Wars Ahsoka, Episode 2, Toil in Trouble, a reference to the witches of Shakespeare's Macbeth, Act 4, Scene 1, because in Ahsoka, witches be crazy. Fair is foul, and
Witches
foul
be
is
crazy.
fair in the state of the New Republic. So let's break
Hera.
down this episode scene by scene and explain why Morgan Elsbeth said time before the word space. Where we're going, we don't need Pergo.
They're leaning towards the time jump.
Shirt available at nerdriot.shop. It's the best way to support what we're doing here at New
Pretty cool
Rockstars.
shirt.
Also, please subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars network, especially the Break Room, where you can find our Ahsoka After Show Wookiee Leaks. My Easter egg breakdown of episode 1 is already on this main New Rockstars channel in a separate video.
Already watched
the
it.
Lucasfilm intro to episode 2 has changed since episode 1.
Got some blue in there.
The droid heads were reflected only in red light, but here it is back to a mix of red and blue. Red on Vader, blue on 3PO, blue on a Clone Trooper helmet, Rex cameo this season, red on the HK Assassin droid, blue on the Inquisitor,
It would be cool to see Rex
blue
again.
on Hu Yang, red on the Stormtrooper, blue on
So
Chopper,
basically
and
blue
then
on good, red on bad.
Sabine's helmet.
Yeah,
The episode opens with
On
Ahsoka
Sabine,
in
wow.
Sabine's hospital room on Lothal. From White, we hear bits of dialogue echoing from last episode.
Really think they're still out there?
I'm counting on you to see this through.
This isn't just about finding Ezra. It's about preventing another war.
I've been looking for this. That's too bad.
The voices end when Ahsoka wakes Sabine up with this sound effect.
Sabine.
Oh, yeah.
After Sabine's defeat
Eric
last
come back.
episode and Hu Yang's absolute burying of her ego this episode, Sabine
You're
faces
right.
some major doubts in her abilities as a Jedi and her Force sensitivity. But
Man,
her
he was
vivid
straightforward.
dreams and the sound with
He
which
didn't sugarcoat
Ahsoka
nothing.
pulled her out of these dreams makes it seem like Sabine still has some unwieldy connection to some kind of mysticism. The Sith rule of 2 favors pairings, of course, reflected with the Master and Apprentice of episode 1's title, but episode 2 invokes witches. Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron, bubble. And witches come in how many, Hocus Pocus fans? 3.
3.
So who are the 3 witches of Ahsoka? Perhaps Sabine's struggle with the Force, despite these mystic qualities, could actually give her a different status, a Night Sister.
Yeah, but
So
what if
our
she's a
3
Night
witches
Sister?
of Ahsoka could be Morgan Elsbeth, Shin Hati, and Sabine Wren. Shin and Baylan are no longer Jedi, but they are something else. And these opposing natural forces could explain why Ahsoka and Sabine struggle to work together. It's not enough that Sabine is Mandalorian. She bristled with her House Vizsla lineage. Something else is calling to Sabine, and she could be revealed as part of the Night Sister ancestry. I'm just
Could
starting
be.
off with a reach theory this episode to alienate the half of you who watch these videos for like Orabesh translations like I'm a YouTube Hu Yang. Sabine reports.
There were 2 galaxies, and then a pathway appeared between them.
Where did the path in our galaxy begin?
Yeah, Ahsoka leans forward, clearly having theorized on this path and this second galaxy in the past. The start of
Rosario
plan we
Dawson
learn
looks so
is
good as
Cetos,
Ahsoka.
where
I'm not
Baylan
gonna
and
lie.
Shin approach the Stonehenge-esque ruins with their Eta-class shuttle. Now, Stonehenge in our world was constructed sometime between 3000 BC and 2000 BC, and its original function remains up for debate by historians and archaeologists. Perhaps a burial site, perhaps something associated with astronomy. But the design of these ruins
some
in Ahsoka
witchcraft.
clearly builds on that
Dun, dun,
historical
dun.
mystery, as this Cetos structure is clearly part of a star map, but when you compare it to the Arcana Night Sister ruins that we saw last episode, those were far more preserved. The state of these ruins indicates something even older, something more forgotten. You may remember the Jedi ruins on the planet Tython from the Mandalorian episode The Tragedy,
Yes.
but I've always wondered if those Jedi ruins could have been built on top of something even older, because even the music Kevin Kiner composes for these shots makes us feel like we are peering in on a lost civilization.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Get that vibe to it. It almost like
Yeah,
riding
so
in
they're
the
trying to
ground.
evoke something from a completely foreign galaxy. We're not in Tatooine anymore, and thank God, because I've hated sand. It's, of course, rather irritating. It gets everywhere. Anyway, Baylan says,
Tell her I believe we have located the reflex point on Cetos.
Now, if
The
Morgan
reflex
Elsbeth
point?
was able to tell Ahsoka that the map sphere was on Arcana, how did she not know where the reflex point was? Was Morgan just unable to decode the map? This tells us something must be significant about Sabine and her insights. She was one who connected the three faces, and it really could just be because of a Night Sister connection with Morgan and Shin. The power of three has finally synced. Baylan looks at the sky
Maybe?
through the
I don't know.
concave arc of one of these columns.
The sound.
Yeah, that horn makes it sound like something is calling to him. Perhaps another whale call of the Purrgil, since it is their path that he's gazing out at. Ahsoka force senses Sabine and Shin's duel from the night before.
That's too bad.
So this is called psychometry, and it's a relatively new force ability that was
Remember she
introduced
was
in Clone
doing
Wars
that.
episode Hunt for Zero, used by the Jedi Quinlan Vos. No relation, but I wish. And the Obi-Wan Kenobi series revealed that Quinlan Vos survived the Purge and traveled on the path of runaway Jedi. So who knows? Maybe Ahsoka and Quinlan cross paths at some point. Sabine's low cat regards Ahsoka curiously, as if appreciating those cat-like points on top of Ahsoka's Laku. And that lowering HK droid appears way earlier than I initially spotted it. He's in the shot right after Ahsoka lights up the Ezra hologram. As that
I didn't
low
realize
cat
that.
did to warn
Okay.
Sabine, it now hisses.
That
at the
scene was
droid beam,
badass.
And Ahsoka takes it down. Sabine dismantles his HK droid head, and I just really appreciate how heavy it seems when she rotates it on the table. The weight of it tells us how much it must have hurt fighting these things hand to hand. Also,
That's why I don't understand, like, why are you fighting a robot hand to hand? They can't, like,
and probably from all the
feel
gear
the pain
tinkering
of a
she does.
punch.
Sabine does work on an explosive droid head in a hospital and deduces it is from Corellia. Remember, Sabine is a former Imperial weapons specialist. She's not afraid of doing this kind of work. Morgan Elsbeth catches up with the rest on Cetos, and Baylan asks,
This place was not built by the Jedi. Whose work is it?
Ooh.
An ancient people from a distant galaxy.
ooh,
Look.
just by looking at these ruins, even before the star map lights up, Morgan knows what they are, which tells us that they are not Night Sister ruins. If they were, she probably would have claimed them as the
Well,
one of her
the
ancestors
aliens
as
they
she
talked
did
about the
with
last
ruins in
one?
Arcana. Morgan uses a green frame to boil the cauldron. I mean, to activate the sphere. Green was the color of the sorcery used by the Night Sisters in
Yes, it
Clone
was.
Wars. Morgan explains,
This is our galaxy.
and then the star map appears around them. It looks so great. And she lines up another galaxy in a ring, and this ring, notice, is lined with Purrgil, the hyperspace whales. This tells us that this must be a kind of migratory path for the Purrgil. It's something that they're all destined to head back to. And this is where they whisk Thrawn and Ezra in the Rebels finale. Morgan goes on in my favorite line of the episode.
That is our destination.
The pathway to Peridia.
Some call it that.
The children at the Jedi Temple call it that. It comes from old stories. Fairy tales.
Tales which are based on truths.
Yes.
So much to dig into here. The
Yes,
pathway
yes,
to
yes.
Peridia is a new thing in Star Wars lore. It sounds like it's a fairy tale that Baylan knew about from his days in the Jedi Temple, but Morgan is saying the legend was based on truth. And I love that she said this because it recalls an interesting line from Ahsoka in the crucial Rebels episode, Season 2, Episode 21, Twilight of the Apprentice, Part 1.
There's always a bit of truth in legends.
That's
Truth
true.
in legends. In that moment, Ahsoka was affirming things like the legend of Mortis with the father, son, and daughter, real experiences she went through, as well as the legends of the Sith and the Jedi. But it was also a meta line from Dave Filoni that the Star Wars Expanded Universe stories, aka legends, still bore truth. This line came months after The Force Awakens came out, after Disney's acquisition of Star Wars, and they recategorized so many stories as legends. But at this point forward, for Dave Filoni, that was really his mission with every Star Wars title, starting the next season of Rebels, Season 3, with the character of Thrawn, who you could say is really the best of expanded universe fiction from Timothy Zahn's novel starting in 1991. At this point, it had been categorized as legends, but with the return of Thrawn, he
Did
made
I read
Thrawn
those
canon
books?
once more. Now, when we
I'm
ask who
interested
built
in
this
what
star map,
Thrawn,
who built these ruins, there
his
are
past
a
and
number of
everything.
ancient civilizations in Star Wars lore we could look at that predate the Sith and the Jedi. Like the Grisk was a warring species from the unknown regions that threatened Thrawn's civilization, the Chiss Ascendancy, but I am betting that the ancient people from a distant galaxy that Morgan refers to are the Rakatans.
The Rakatans
So
we're
the
talking about.
Rakata, aka the Builders, were an ancient amphibious humanoid species, the race believed to have invented hyperspace technology. As a force-sensitive race, the dark side corrupted the Rakatans and turned them into cruel warriors who enslaved every other species they came across,
wow.
forming their infinite empire. The Rakatans actually came up in the Knights of the Old Republic game, which also involves star maps such as this. Dave Filoni and his team are clearly into Knights of the Old Republic. They keep bringing up references to Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah,
details, like
I've
the
never
Kree
played
Dragon
that game.
and its giant pearl from the Mandalorian Season 2 premiere. We also know that Lucasfilm wants us to remember the Rakatans because they included in Andor of all titles, this cryptic
He
little
did say that in
Easter
the
egg.
last one.
It's a Quati signet. Blue Kyber, Skystone, the ancient world, celebrates the uprising against the Rakatan invaders.
The uprising against the Rakatan invaders, the moment the current ancient era of Star Wars civilization overthrew the Rakatan Empire. So with this detail in
I
Andor,
need to
the
dive
Rakatans
deep into
shifted
that.
from being an apocryphal legends backstory
I'm about to go buy some
firm
old
Star
Star
canon.
Wars
So
books.
my theory is that the Rakatans are the ones who built these ruins. The Night Sisters are a cult from that Rakatan era using
Yeah,
dark
between this and
sorcery,
Starfield, man, I'm
Jedi
reading
and
a lot of
Sith, and
lore.
the Purgo are the species of whales that the Rakatans derived hyperspace technology from. We might be looking at a pathway not just through space, but through time. Because Morgan says here,
Thrawn calls to me. Across time and space.
normally astrophysicists say space before time. Space time.
Space
According
time.
to Einstein's theory of relativity, which I recognize does not apply to the Star Wars physics, but in our world, according to the theory of relativity, gravity affects our perception of the passage of time, and time is a dimension theoretically navigable the way space is. This has been the basis of much science fiction and fantasy, including Frank Herbert's Dune, Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, and yes, George
Love
Lucas's Star
Interstellar.
Wars. And Morgan says time first, though. And I believe the reason this path to Peridia leads to one fixed point, when Thrawn as a living figure would presumably be able to move around in that galaxy wherever he is, the reason why it just points to one spot is that this path doesn't lead to a point in space, it leads to a point in time. And this wouldn't be the first time Star Wars touched on time travel, because in Rebels, Season 4, Episode 13, Ezra Bridger ventures into the Lothal Jedi Temple and follows projections of the Loth Wolves through a portal to a realm called the World Between Worlds. It's a mystical dimension that connects the Force to all of space and time. The imagery of these rotating lines in the star maps in Ahsoka totally echoes what we saw in the World Between Worlds. In this dimension, Ezra hears echoes of many past Star Wars moments, and he revisits the moment that Ahsoka fought Darth Vader and Malachor back in the Season 2 finale. Our man alters history, just a little bit. Or you could argue, had already altered history. Now, Filoni developed the World Between Worlds, he says, in conversations with George Lucas, and he based it on the wood between the worlds in C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. To be clear, Dave Filoni did tell Cinema Blend in 2018 that they destroyed the temple at the end of that episode because they didn't want this to be like an ongoing trope in Star Wars. Here's what he said: I don't really think of it as time travel. It's not really a thing where you go through one door
gotta
and
finish
out another
Rebels,
in a
man.
different time. The World Between Worlds is really about knowledge and gaining knowledge. As the Doom Wolf says, what's in there is knowledge and destruction. You can gain knowledge of the future or futures that may happen, and you can see things that happen in the past. You can at times choose to alter them, but it is perilous to do so, and when you alter something, you don't know if that's not the way it always happened. So destruction is the other half of what's in there. When you go through these doorways, you're in peril of destruction because you're missing all sorts of things that would have happened or things that would have happened otherwise, you know. So it's a dangerous game, but it's not something we are here going in and out of different doors. It's an extension of the Jedi's ability to perceive the future and the past as described in Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, okay, Filoni, but if Ezra saved Ahsoka, it's still pretty much time travel. It's just hard to look at this show with its wolf motif. Skoll and Hati, the Norse mythological wolves who chase the sun and moon across the sky, the Knights of the Old Republic star maps, the mentions of ancient civilizations, and Thrawn speaking to Morgan through time, and not conclude that there might be some connection to the World Between Worlds. And this is all too much for you. We are in the middle of a Rebels rewatch series on the New Rockstars channel. Be sure to check those out and keep an eye out for
I'm about to watch those
season
too.
3 and season 4 that are coming in the next. One more detail I gotta point out here. As Morgan listens to those whispers through time, it does sound like the whisper says the word Morgan.
It does say Morgan.
So is Thrawn part of the Night Sisters himself, or is there another acolyte of Thrawn's, wherever he is, whenever he is?
What's that dinosaur in the background?
Morgan? As Morgan leaves, Baylan tells Shin that once they find Thrawn, for some it will be war, for others a new beginning, but for them,
absolute power,
such as you've never dreamed.
Oh.
Baylan's objective is beyond the Rebel versus Empire conflict to the present generation, beyond the Sith or the Jedi, whose teachings that they practice now, really an ancient interpretation of the Force that has been lost to the ages. Okay, on to Corellia, which has an atmospheric gate similar to the planet of Scarif in Rogue One. The surface of Corellia is covered in water, with industrial interlocking docks and pathways. We actually saw Corellia from the street level in the opening sequence of Solo, a Star Wars story. That's where Han Solo got his start. I like how in the pods below, you can actually see vast Imperial Star Destroyers in various states of deconstruction, the back parts of their triangular shape still visible. Ahsoka parks the T6 beside the Phantom 2. This is the detachable shuttle that connects to the Ghost, the primary ship in Rebels. Regional Supervisor Min Weaver is played by Peter Jacobson, longtime character actor, best known as Dr. Chris Taub on House MD. The Ghost Crew's astromech droid Chopper sits in the droid for the Phantom 2. As was the case in Rebels, he is voiced here by Dave Filoni himself. As before, whenever Chopper talks, it's clearly Filoni uttering something that's been distorted, and here it kind of sounds like, "Watch your step, Ahsoka." This is the first time we've seen Chopper in live action, other than when they rolled him out on stage at Star Wars Celebration in 2022. Unlike other astromechs we've seen, his head dome can kind of wobble R2-D2s that can only rotate laterally. This gives Chopper a bit more zaniness and sass.
Personality,
talking shit. So Weaver explains to Ahsoka and Hera that most of Morgan Elsbeth's pro-Imperial staff still work at this
I ain't gonna
facility.
lie.
You will still find ex-Imperials at every level of the New Republic government.
Hera
He goes on
looking
to
good in
say,
this scene.
The average worker doesn't care about the nuances of galactic politics. They have loyalty so long as they're paid.
And you?
I'm a businessman, General. My loyalty is to my investors.
Son of a bitch. Like in season 3 of The Mandalorian, this is part of Lucasfilm's long game of showing the vulnerabilities of the New Republic that are just
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
be
that
easier
guy.
for threats like the First Order to rise. This whole debate over the New Republic's defense priorities is better explored in Chuck Wendig's Aftermath novels, as well as Claudia Gray's Bloodline, which goes into Leia Organa's fallout.
See,
with the
these
New
the books I
Republic
need
and
to
the
read,
formation
man.
of
There's
the
so many
Resistance.
books out
Liu
there.
Yang, meanwhile, continues to practice some Jedi protocol as he plays matchmaker to try to get Sabine to return to Ahsoka. But I like how he does not flatter her.
I have known many Padawans over the centuries, and I can safely say your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all.
I love this line because it shows that Sabine isn't just like a randomly apt user of the Force. She sucks. But again,
yeah.
she still has some
Not like
mysticism
Rey.
with these dreams. And they made
You know how
her
Rey was
something
just
older than Jedi
a
Orthodox.
facade,
Meanwhile,
whatever.
Weaver explains that they produced 9 hyperspace engines from the old Star Destroyers for some new ship that Hera calls bullshit on because the New Republic isn't working on anything.
I ain't gonna
that
lie.
big. We learn later
Hera
that this is
could
for
get it.
Morgan Elsbeth's Eye of
I
Sion.
don't care
And
what you
9
say.
hyperdrive cores is totally excessive. You should only need 1, but for something this big, you need 9. And in our numerological focus on the number 3, magic number 9 is 3 sets of 3. Weaver says General Syndulla isn't authorized to see what projects these drives might be used for, and he
Bull.
reports the only droids they have at this facility include CCLs, IW-37s, HV-7s, and other load lifters, which are all loading droids that we've seen in Star Wars before. But the protocol droid totally rats out her boss. She saw an HK droid and it recently prevented her from inspecting inventory 5 days prior, and these red-suited neo-Nazis say, yeah, I guess now's a good time to make a move. For the Empire! Literally,
That
all
dude.
of these operators pull blasters on them. And this 4th one, Ahsoka uses the Force to pull the blaster out of her hand with the hand that is still holding the lightsaber hilt. She does this in the fight with Marok later. It's just an interesting move that
That
we saw
fight was
Keller and
nice.
Beck do on The Mandalorian when he rescued Grogu. Ahsoka is stopped outside by the Inquisitor Marok with an HK droid. The Inquisitor unfurls the cape like a samurai.
I love that
jewel.
stance.
We still don't know who Marok is, but the physical performance was done by Paul Darnell, a stunt performer on Jurassic World, Matrix Resurrections, and Tenet. Ahsoka stabs the HK droid and continues to drive toward the Inquisitor,
That was dope.
using the droid as a shield for a beat until both lightsaber wielders chop into pieces. At this point, the Inquisitor fires up the second half of the lightsaber and starts looking like a true Inquisitor. And we're just assuming
Yeah.
this is an Inquisitor because they're carrying the same kind of lightsaber the
I mean,
Inquisitor does.
it's an
And
Inquisitor.
Marok does
That's the thing I
look
said.
like the 8th brother with that helmet, but the 8th brother died at the end of season 2, so who knows? This whole section is just great Rebels action. Hera evades blaster fire as Chopper snaps at her.
I love that
Shoot
scene.
it down, it would crash into the port city. Just ready a
They're
tracking
just
device.
going back and forth, talking
And
crap
don't
to each
miss
other.
this time.
Good lord. It sounds like when Hera says shooting it down will crash into the port city below, Chopper's response is, and that's bad? Those of us who call Chopper a war criminal remember Rebels Season 2, Episode 9, Stealth Strike, when Chopper sabotaged a gravity well in the Imperial Interdictor, destroying it and 2 other ships, accounting for thousands and thousands of deaths. Don't tell me it was wartime. Don't compare it to Luke destroying the Death Star. This is totally different. There were other ways Chopper could have handled this. And you just cannot ignore all the times.
Yeah,
he was a
you
little
push that
sticker.
one
I
droid
get it,
off.
Calling Chopper a war criminal, you would have to call many of these characters war criminals. But none of them are as mean and as stinky as Chopper is. Though, in fairness to
Chopper
Chopper
doesn't give a
here,
hell.
it seems like everyone on that Corellian base were Imperial sympathizers. So, you
Pretty
know,
much.
I guess I can't really blame them. Chopper snaps at Hera.
No, I did not go through your stuff.
And as Chopper
Yes, you
puts his
did.
hands on his hips, it sounds like he chirps, "Did you go through my stuff?" And then, "Yes, you did."
you did.
Rogue rotates a lightsaber blade and chucks it at Ahsoka. Balin's Eta-class shuttle fires on Ahsoka, and Marok boards it. And I think my favorite Ahsoka move of this episode, she
The little-
no
yeah.
look dodges the
That was
lightsaber
dope.
as it boomerangs past her shoulder. The tracker that
A
Chopper
boss.
uses looks somewhat like the puck that Obi-Wan Kenobi uses to track Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, but Hera rolls the Phantom 2 over the CT transport, giving Chopper a window to toss his tracker on the hull, and it is freaking
Yes.
badass. Kind of reminds me of when Rey rotates the Millennium Falcon in The Force Awakens with the dead drop to align Finn in the gunner seat.
Well, Rey can just do it all.
Look, I know some of you want to pretend the sequel trilogy didn't happen, but come on, this was sick. Chopper does a fist bump and then flexes his droid arms. He's a war criminal. Back on Lothal,
He's a war
Sabine gives her
criminal.
Lothcat a well-earned scratchy scratch for saving her and Ahsoka's life, and Sabine digs out her old Mandalorian armor that she wore throughout Rebels. One pauldron with a Rebel crest, one pauldron decorated with a Purgle, some chest pieces, and then 2 wrist band braces that were given to her by the Mandalorian protector, Finn Rao, in Season 3, Trials of the Darksaber. Now, this painting of the armor is actually what we saw Sabine wearing right at the end of the Rebels series. The paint job on the armor was different throughout most of the show. We see Sabine kneeling in front of her helmet and using a knife to cut her hair. Kanan Jarrus does the same thing in Rebels Season 4, Episode 10, Jedi Knight, shaving his beard and cutting his knot with the knife. Does this mean Sabine could be headed to death? Maybe, maybe not, because Sabine would always keep her hair short before, because her head or scalp would get hot underneath that Mandalorian helmet, and now she's back in the armor. Hera and Ahsoka watch Weaver arrested by the New Republic officers with ships marked with police and Orbesh, and Ahsoka says,
It's not loyalty. It's greed.
We see Sabine back in her armor on the Lothal Tower at sundown, the lighting matching the final epilogue scene of Rebels perfectly. She touches the mural she painted of the Ghost crew, just as she did in that scene, and Natasha Lyonne is shot from Ezra's perspective at this downward angle, making her head look just a bit larger than it would normally, and she's never looked more like her animated self. Also, like in the final scene of Rebels, Ahsoka appears behind her, ready to whisk her away on a mission to find and rescue Ezra. But there's one key difference. In that scene, Ahsoka
wearing white,
with staff in white robes. Now, Ahsoka's robes are a darker gray. Dave Filoni has long been interested in the character of Gandalf. Like when talking about Kanan as an incomplete mentor, Filoni said, a lot of my modeling comes from a lot of my exposure to reading Tolkien. Gandalf is not a complete mentor. He's way more down the path than anyone else, but he's not complete. That's why he's very symbolically gray. He has to figure it out along the way and then attain a new level. After people thought Ahsoka had died when her voice appeared in The Rise of Skywalker, Filoni tweeted an image likening her with Gandalf. In the Rebels finale, Ahsoka was in white, the sun behind her, meant to evoke Gandalf's return as Gandalf the White. But now, Ahsoka in gray suggests a reverse of that transformation. She's less of the enlightened, perfect mentor, and now she's more of an uncertain gray Jedi. But that uncertainty is where she needs to be for the road ahead. Ahsoka allows Sabine to take them out to hyperspace, calling her Padawan. And I don't think we're looking at a Jedi Master and Apprentice, but something in between. So this episode ends with the Eye of Sion in orbit over Cetos in the Denab system. Its 9th hyperdrive core plugs into this vast ring. Assuming the 2 big engines on either side contain 2 cores each, that would add up to 9. But at the top of this is the golden ship that we saw Morgan leaving Cetos in earlier. Marok, Baylan, and Shin appear through a different medium of hologram, one based more on green dust. This is different than the blue flickering holograms we normally see, and it's a lot clearer, better resolution.
Yeah, it is.
Assuming this is a kind of Night Sister magic based on the green color tone, but it shows us that this ancient magic is far superior to the current technology. Baylan meditates for a moment and he says Ahsoka's presence in the Force is elusive, but her determination is vivid. He goes on to say,
Kill her would be a shame.
Killing her would be a shame.
Few Jedi left.
Sentimental.
Truth.
a curious exchange. Of these 3, Shin, Marok, and Baylan is the only one of these 3 to have not yet gone saber to saber with Ahsoka. We know from trailer footage he will, but he is reluctant to do so. As a former Jedi, he doesn't like the idea of purging any other Jedi. Bear in mind that somewhere out there, though, is Luke Skywalker. And truly, with The Last Jedi, the Jedi Order will come to an end, and Hu Yang will cry. Please support us with this Fulcrum shirt available at nerdriot.shop. You can subscribe to all 3 of the—
As always, another good breakdown from Mr. Eric Voss. Yeah, so like I said, I'm enjoying this series so far, and there's so much I know and don't know, so it's good to get these breakdowns. But yeah, let me know if you were watching Ahsoka, what you thought of the first 2 episodes. I enjoyed it so far. Can't wait to see more. Also want to dive more into the lore of Star Wars. So any books or suggestions on comics, books, literature I should read, let me know. But yeah, till next time, guys. See you next week when we do one of these breakdowns. But then, see you when I see you. Peace.